What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? You are watching the End Zone panel. I'm your host, Preston, and today we've got a little bit of a different video for you guys. So, we're going to be going over the new head coaching change in the Buffalo organization with Joe Brady, as well as some of the moves he has made already as his tenure moves forward here for the Buffalo Bills. So, he's only been the head coach for a few weeks now, but there's a few moves I do want to dive into and I think deserve some time, really digging deep and going over them. So to start, I guess the first question I want to answer is, why was McDermott fired? So he's been our head coach, the entire Josh Allen era, 9 years as the head coach for the Buffalo Bills, and had really developed a culture here in Buffalo, in the locker room, that for sure will be missed. But according to owners, it felt that there was a preliminary playoff wall hit. We weren't progressing. Every year it was either a divisional round loss or a conference championship loss. We just couldn't get over the hump, some might say, with McDermott as head coach. So they felt it was time to shake things up and bring somebody new in. They did hire within the organization, and they hired their former offensive coordinator in Joe Brady. So he's going to be taking over as head coach of the Buffalo Bills in the 2026 season. He's gonna be the youngest head coach in football at 36, so he's got a lot to prove being that young. But I think a lot of people are pretty happy with the move so far. For starters, I heard he knocked the interview out of the park, and there was no nepotism or favoritism. That is what is said from the owners, so there's no way of actually deciphering if that is true or not. But I heard he knocked interviews out of the park. I heard he did really well with questions, and I heard that the interview process was just as vigorous as it was for other candidates. So Joe Brady himself said it was the hardest interview he's ever had. But yeah, so they ended up going with Joe Brady, and I think a lot of it has to do with his connection with Josh Allen. Allen had credited Joe Brady a lot for his MVP win in 2024. He's had 2 full seasons now, about 2.5 total, with Allen being his quarterback and him being the offensive coordinator. So there's a familiar system there, and I think that was a big reason for because Josh Allen had sat in on the interviews and helped with the interviewing process. So I think him knowing the system, and they wanted to bring in an offensive-minded coach as well. So I think it's going to pair really well. And it's going to give Allen a really good opportunity to learn and grow in this system because, he's never had a offensive-minded head coach. He's been rotating offensive coordinators every 2-3 years now. He's never really gotten a chance to fully, grasp and 100% learn a certain scheme. So now with, an offensive-minded head coach, I think he's going to have a really good opportunity to fully lock in and master the scheme. Brady brings a little bit of a different philosophy than McDermott to the locker room. Brady's whole thing is love and energy. His open presser, he talked all about communication, connection and love. That's been his thing. He's always been a high energy guy, outward with his emotions. And McDermott was very much so the opposite. He was very calm and collected, but they had a strong foundation in the building. So it's going to be a switch up here in the locker room. It's going to be very high energy, very intense, and I think people are going to be more outspoken as well. So that's a switch that's going to be coming for sure in this next upcoming season. So we're now going to dive into Joe Brady's offensive and defensive coordinators that he's already filled. So we'll start with the offensive side of the ball. He hired Pete Carmichael from New Orleans. He was I believe he was the quarterback's coach. Actually, let me fact check that because I'm not sure that's true. But he came from New Orleans, and he's got a connection with Joe Brady already, as they both worked in New Orleans in the 2017 and 2018 season. But there's going to be a connection there. Let's see. Okay, yes, he was the OC from 2009 to 2023 with the Saints, and then I think he took a more minor role this past season. But Joe Brady has already confirmed he is going to continue calling plays. Um, he's not, his coordinator is more there to be the senior eyes, I guess you could say, in the room. So just kind of make sure that because they're on the same wavelength, they have similar scheme beliefs, and they are definitely going to feed off of each other. But at the end of the day, Joe Brady is going to make the final calls, um, and Carmichael, I guess you could say, is here for reinforcements, just to make sure fully think through all these situations that they're going to have to be dealing with. So he's going to be a smaller role offensive coordinator, so he won't be as important, I guess you could say. He's very important, but he won't be as important in the play calling decisions because Joe Brady will continue with that role. Um, he's got 26 years of NFL experience, so he's got that veteran status that I think we need because a lot of our coaches are younger, and we need someone who's been in this league a long time and really can grasp the things that maybe someone who hasn't been in the league as long may be able to grasp. Now, moving to the defensive side, McDermott ended up calling plays about the second half of the season last year after Bobby Babbage had a very, very bad outing in the earlier part of the season. So Sean McDermott had taken on those roles, and then when he was fired, they have to replace a defensive coordinator as well. So they went and got Jim Leonard, who is my absolute favorite hire by Joe Brady so far. He's coming out of Denver. He had a smaller role there. He was the assistant head coach and the defensive pass game coordinator in Denver. So he's got a lot of experience. And Denver's defense was unbelievable last year, and a lot of that was because of Jim Leonard. He's also very young, but I'm really excited to see what happens here. He has a completely different mindset than McDermott did prior. McDermott was known for that technically a 4-3 look, but it was a very weird McDermott-esque coined look, which was more of a 4-2-5. They led the league in nickel usage. He believed that nickel corner was a full-time position on that field. That's McDermott. Taron Johnson was a huge part of his defensive scheme and a big reason. He liked small ball, quick, athletic players. So it's going to be a big change here with Jim Leonard, who has more of a 4-3 base with a 3-4 attack system, which I love. He loves big bodies on the line, which is great. I absolutely love that. We've been known to draft undersized D linemen, and it just has not worked in our favor really ever. You can name a few. Ed Oliver, injury prone. He started to pick it up last year, and then he got injured again, of course. Rousseau picked it up at the end of last year, but had been signed to a massive deal and really hasn't proven himself. Those are both first-round picks. You got Epinesa, who's a second-round pick, who, once a year looks like prime Aaron Donald. He'll have an unbelievable, Hall of Fame level game and then just never do anything close to that for the rest of the season. So there's been a lot of misses on these smaller D linemen, as well as, some of the trade acquisitions we've made and free agent signings with Joey Bosa, Von Miller, both signed to huge contracts. Both really didn't perform in Buffalo. So it's going to be nice to get a fresh look on the defense that we haven't had in so long. It'll be, like I said, a 4-3 base with a 3-4 attacking system. Jim Leonard was also a former Bills safety, so he's got some rapport with the organization already. And he's really high IQ. He plays smart football, which is, I think what we need. But I also want to see him being aggressive on the defensive side, which we never saw from McDermott. 13 seconds, he had his backs playing, 10, 15 yards out. Makes no sense. So I would love to see some aggressive moves as well from Jim Leonard, and I think I will. Jim Leonard loves the idea of Cole Bishop and Christian Benford, both emerging, potential stars in this league. They both are very versatile and can play in a lot of different spots, which he loved, because he also played a versatile safety in the NFL back in the day. So that's my review on Jim Leonard. I think it's going to work out really well, and I'm really excited to see what changes we make on the defensive side of the ball. Um, Going into the staff mix, there's been a few changes already. We had our offensive line coach who had retired after McDermott was fired, as well as our wide receivers coach who had left. But Brady has already kept six of his key offensive assistants, including Kelly Skipper, who's our running backs coach, and Rob Boris, who's our tight ends coach. Both of those position groups have really excelled and been the two of the bright spots on the Buffalo offense. There's going to be some new faces as well, I might add. Bo Hardigree we just brought in, who's going to be our new quarterbacks coach, and he's really there to help contain Allen's touchdown to turnover ratio. So he's really trying to develop. I wouldn't say develop. I would say strengthen Allen's decision making. Bobby April the third and Jay Valai, hired both for the defensive side of the ball. They both come from college, which fits Leonard's vision of more confusing and a lot of different looks, like college teams often have many different looks they'll throw at you in a single game, and I think that's the kind of idea that Jim Leonard is going for. McDermott played into it a bit last year, like changing the blitzes, changing the calls at the line, during the wild card, which kind of messed with Trevor Lawrence. But bringing this versatile defense, I think, is going to be really crucial to them being a big part of if we go to a Super Bowl, because as of right now, a lot of the time we've had the opportunity to go to the Super Bowl, the defense has just not stepped up. The roster situation is the last thing I'm going to get into here, and we're in a difficult spot right now. We're kind of in cap hell, I guess you could say. We're projected to be anywhere from 10 to 15 to maybe even 20 million over the cap, and that's already including the expected bump in salary cap for teams, which is supposed to be somewhere around 20 million more this year. And so Bean and Brady both together are going to have to make some pretty ruthless cuts coming soon. So I think a good move, you could move Dawson Knox out of there. That'll clear up about 10 million in cap space, which is unbelievable that he's getting paid that much. I think you could trade him somewhere for a second, third round pick maybe. But you will have to fill his role, which you may have to go get somebody in the draft if that situation ends up happening. But there's a few restructures you can do. I would lean on the defensive side to restructure. I mean, we just restructured Allen, and he just signed a massive extension, so I don't know how possible that would be. But the defensive side of the ball with Rousseau, Bernard, Benford, I think those could be restructured to save some money there. The Keon Coleman drama, of course, his off-field immaturity was a big talking point the past, really since he got drafted. But by year 2, coming into year 3 now, we hadn't really seen any improvements. And during the presser, Bean and Brady both said that Keon, they still believe in him, and he still has a spot on the team, and he really just needs to work on his immaturity levels, I guess you could say. So this is a big test for Brady's accountability. That's his thing. So we're gonna have to. I guess we're just gonna have to wait and find out and see what they do with Keon, if they give him another shot. I think they will. But I want to see how Brady expects to develop him while also keeping his immaturity in check. That's about all I'll get into today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave any comments of any things that I might have missed out on, or something else you want to hear about within the organization, because I'm Bills specialist, so I have a lot of knowledge on the Buffalo Bills organization, Buffalo sports as a whole. We can get into the Sabres, but that's a whole nother topic right now. But yeah, you're listening, you're watching to the End Zone panel, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.